Starting about 1894, the well-dressed log driver on the Shuswap wore a cloth hat and a mackinaw and suspenders on his wool pants and, of course, cork boots to cling to the logs. His cost him about 10 bucks a pair, a week and a half's wages. Usually the logs came down here and eddied and went on down to Enderby, but here at the Chucks, sometimes the logs would jam up, and the log drivers had to run out on that jam, pry the logs loose, maybe blast them, and then get the heck out of the way before they got run over. Tonight on Pioneers in Places, Dave Simard tells us the story of log drives on the Shuswap River. Welcome to Pioneers in Places. Mike Roberts with our special guest today, Dave Simard. He's our storyteller for a story, Dave, that you really learned at the knee of your father and talking with old-timers up in the Enderby, Maple Lake area, right?
That's right.
Yeah? You said, Dad, what did you do for a living?
Well, I knew what Dad did for a living. He was a logger all his life.
Yeah? And we're talking specifically about the area from Cherryville, down the Coldstream Valley and through Lumbee and up to Maple Lake, and then from Kingfisher down to Enderby. That is the Shuswap River. It was called something else, though, at one time.
It was called the Spell Machine, was how it started out.
Yeah?
And then it was changed to Shuswap. I don't know why, but at any rate.
There you go.
There we go.
And look, there's a shot of young Dave Simard, circa 1939, sitting on a stack of shakes. So you were living up in what area of this region?
At that time, that was Noisy Creek at the north end of Maple Lake.
Yeah? And logging was taking place throughout all of this area. And it was a pretty good logging show.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. That was a great logging show.
The thing we're talking about tonight is the river drives, the log drives on the Shuswap River. So when did this start?
Well, as nearly as I can find out, it started around about early 1890s and progressed. And the big mill was in Enderby, of course, and the river and the lake. That was the transportation corridors for all of these logs that were required by the mill. And there were a number of mill different ownerships. And I guess it was around about 1906 somewhere that the A.R. Rogers Company from Minneapolis moved into Enderby and really expanded the mill and it up to its 100,000 feet a day and stuff like that.
It is a big installation.
Oh, it's a big mill, you bet.
And as much timber as could be cut would supply that mill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But now there were several sources supplying the mill. There was, you know, from around Maple Lake and the Shuswap Valley itself. And of course, mustn't forget about the early pioneers that were clearing land, and logging, of course, in the wintertime was a method of earning a few dollars so that they could continue their farming and clearing, you know, next year and so forth.
But when I think of the fact it's in the 1890s, there are no tractors or trucks or anything like that around. So if you're way up near Cherryville, a long way away from Enderby and the sawmill, how do you get your logs from there to there? And obviously, it's log drives on the Shuswap River. When do you cut them? How do you get the logs from the bush down to the river?
Well, of course, in a lot of cases, you skidded them with teams of horses and got to the edge of the river or wherever. But mostly, you came down with sleighs.
How would you describe the crews that cut up the timber?
Up until recently, you know, there were not many sawmill companies that had equipment, sort of a thing. So logging contractors
got the logs to them. And in the 1800s, these guys, how many people would be in a crew, in Johnson's crew, for example?
Well, I think there would be about 30, maybe. You know,
they'd live out in the bush all winter long cutting the timber.
Yeah, and they might get to town every couple of months or something like that. Or
yeah, but special occasions.
Yeah, they were a long time in these camps.
Obviously, you had to have a happy crew because they were doing a lot of work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you betcha.
Now,
Dark-
for
dark and
example,
dark.
the cutting down of some of these trees, the size of these trees, I mean, defies my concept when you're dealing with hand-powered tools. But we got something, as a matter of fact, here. This right here is a springboard, and this is what you'd use to get up above the butt swell on some of those big trees.
That's right.
You'd cut a notch about that big
Yeah.
in the tree, and then boom,
Yeah.
and then you'd stand on this.
Yes.
Was that a dangerous process?
Oh, sure it was. Because can you imagine balancing on that and working, well, first of all, to chop a notch in the damn tree, and then with a crosscut saw? Oof, yeah, that was tough going.
And you'd be up one side and your partner'd be up
Oh,
the
yeah.
other side,
Yes.
and then sawing.
Yes.
And you'd have to do that on hundreds and hundreds of trees.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Once you got your trees down to the edge of the river in the wintertime, when did the log drive begin?
I know you had to be on the water by the 24th of May for sure.
Yeah?
Yeah. And because, you know, you wanted to be on the rising water. And because I don't know whether it's true, but my old dad used to tell me that when the river was coming up, beginning to flood, it always was high in the center. Now,
I thought water was flat. You know, I thought it found its
water
own-
was flat also, but anyway, he used to claim, and as long as the water was on the rise, then stuff would tend to float towards the center. You know,
Amazing.
you'd think it would slip off and get to shore, but once the water started to recede, then the opposite happened, and everything then that was floating went to shore.
Amazing.
Now, I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I know that they used it faithfully because they were always driving on a rising water if possible.
What's the process for then starting this log drive?
Well, like the drivers, there was quite a big crew of drivers, I think now, and I'm not too sure about it, but probably about 20 guys maybe, depending upon how much wood there was to be rolled into the river, because the farmers or the loggers or the crews anyway that decked the logs along the river, and they were decked, and they were generally on skids, and so that once you started breaking the pile down, they would sort of
Natural gravity would roll them into the lake, into
That's
the
right,
water.
into the water. So anyway, you might as well say that everything worked from the back end.
So the guys furthest up the river
Yeah.
launched their logs first.
Yep.
And down they would come.
Yep.
And how much wood would be in the river on a given drive? How many logs would be in there?
Oh gosh, number of logs, I don't know,
Would
but
you-
stabs of them anyway.
Well, how would you measure the
Well,
amount of...
thousands of board feet generally was how it was measured back then. And you know, there was in river drives in the heyday of the Enderby A.R. Rogers Company, I'm sure that there were log drives of 15 million feet probably.
15 million board feet
Yeah.
of timber would come down those
Yeah.
rivers.
Now they said, my father used to tell me that when they reared the drive at the Enderby end, like, in other words, from the mill up the river, it was packed with logs for as far as 9 miles. Now, you understand that you reared the drive, the water's still pretty high, you've hopefully still been on a rising water, and now the water starts to recede, and of course the darn logs, you know,
They're hanging up.
hanging up everywhere. So Pop said that there was teams of horses that had to be in the river, always skidding logs off of the bars and stuff like that, and floating them, and that was just a job that had to be done for till
Till you
next
go-
spring.
Exactly. Now, it strikes me, I mean, here's a naive person thinking, nothing could be simpler than dumping a log in a river and waving goodbye as it heads down to the mill on its own. What can go wrong?
Everything. You know, every time that you got an island, you've got a possible place for a log jam, and that was called, in the vernacular, was called a towhead. And so you knew what islands, and you knew where you were going to have jams, and there was a lot of heavy handwork to try and break these log jams loose and keep everything moving.
Did you position people at these tow heads to kind of steer the logs around them to keep it from happening?
Now, you know, maybe in the old days, you know, that I don't know anything about, but at any rate, they might have had wing booms that would have sheared the logs away from these islands and things.
Just to deflect
But
them.
I think that basically they were allowed to jam up, and those old drivers were just hard workers, and they got to a tow head or to a jam and just went to work with the PVs and the pike poles and started making things move.
It's sort of like pickup sticks with lethal sized sticks. So I'm going to take a break here. We're going to come back in a moment and talk about the process of breaking up a log jam with Dave Simard. Don't go away. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. I'm talking with Dave Simard about the log drives on the Shuswap River, and these are the tools of the trade of people who were working on the log drives. This piece of machinery right here is called a PV. PV. And its function was, by the look of it, a serious one, because look at the thickness of that handle. That is strong. What do you do with this?
Well, this was just second nature. You just, I mean, everybody that was on a drive used the PV, and one of the functions of the PV, as much as anything, was as a pry.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know, you get it in and pry and get things
that's why the
moving.
handle was so darn substantial.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It had to be very hard.
And
or very
this
big.
hook on the end here was to turn the
Oh yeah,
log over.
that's to turn the log, right?
All right. And this unit here, a much more delicate piece, is the, what do you call
Pike
this?
pole.
Pike pole.
Yeah.
And now it would normally come with a what, about a 20-foot handle?
Yeah, about a 20-foot handle, yeah.
And its function was simply to steer.
Steer logs, yeah. And, you know, like if you were trying to break a jam, you might have 2 or 3 guys with pike poles that would get pushing on a log and, you know, get it moving. And then if you got one out, well, then maybe there was, you know, a chance to get in with a PV and start prying things and get more going. It was,
Yeah, but I've got this picture, and you've got this picture. Look at the size of the logs in this jam. And these men are dancing over these giant logs, hoping to pry one loose so the whole thing can come free. This looks dangerous to me.
oh yeah. When things started to move, you know, the jam, because lots of times they would work on it and get it sort of loosened up, and then all of a sudden it would swing and go. Well, it was, man, get going. Let's leave here.
You got to be limber.
Yeah, right.
This is another of the tools of the trade. These are,
Cork boots.
and
I
look
didn't
at
realize they were so.
well, I mean, they were used. We got the stuff on the bottom. So these nails, sharpened spikes on the bottom, allowed you to get some grip on slippery wood.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You had everybody had their cork boots, right? You didn't work on a river drive without cork boots.
And now these looked like they could cost a little money. Was he Pierre or Paris, or were these Dayton's? What was the cork boot of choice of the wise?
Well, Paris was generally the boot of choice. Dayton's came later. I
Yeah.
don't know what those are.
What happens if you meet a log jam that is impervious to manpower twisting and turning and prying and prodding? What do you do then?
Well, you blew it up, or, you know, used powder. Now, back in those days, that many years ago, it
Well,
wasn't...
you can grab a chunk of that, because
And can I throw it?
that's dynamite, but you didn't have dynamite.
No, you didn't have dynamite. Back in those days, they had this old black powder, and it was kind of like sen, you know, little... that you put in the-
Granule?
Yeah.
It was kind of granulated.
Yeah, and you put a cap in it and a fuse and lit it off, and it was kind of like a stumping powder. It was it had a lot of pressure somehow to. It was a slow sort of a boom, but
It could lift.
yeah, it could lift.
That must have been dangerous, though. I mean, the very concept of scampering over these, it must have cost men injuries, if not lives.
Oh, I'm sure it did, Mike. I'm sure it did. But you know, somehow or another, there was a will to survive, and these were professional old guys. They got by.
Well, how many miles of river are there from sort of the south end of entering into the south end of Maple Lake? How far down would these logs have come from the
Say
south?
Sugar Lake?
Yeah, from Sugar Lake.
Well, I think that's around about 25 miles at least.
So there could be lots of jams on this
Oh,
river.
sure. Oh, yeah, right. And then, of course, once they got down to the lake and into the Shuswap River, well, there was lots of
More jams down there. Okay, going to take a break, come back in just a second, because once you got this, it's a never-ending task. Once you get the logs actually into Maple Lake, now all you have to do is figure out how to get them 10 miles up the lake so you can transport them across and down from Kingfisher to Enderby. A task for horses. We'll tell you how they work that right after this break. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with Dave Simard talking about log drives on the Shuswap River. Okay, we got Maple Lake now, where the Shuswap River comes into it at the south end. You've got about how much timber waiting in the south end of Maple Lake?
Well, I suppose that from the logging that was done between Maple and Sugar, there was probably several million feet, board feet, that were, because they would put a bag boom around the bottom of the river and, collect the logs and then close it, and it would be ready to tow down Maple Lake.
Now, there are no boats on Maple Lake to tow logs anywhere. How do you tow logs when you don't have a boat with a motor?
Well, they had what they called a horse jack, and really what all it was just a horse, so you had 1 horsepower. They may have had a team of horses sometimes on it, but generally it was just 1 horse, and it walked around and around on the float, and it was a capstan. Now, what the performance was, they went out with an anchor and dropped an anchor, and then the horse jack was there tied directly to the boom, and the horse started walking around and around the float.
This process of horse jacking, it's just like when you jack your car up, it goes up that little bit and that little bit. Well, a horse jack takes the boom that little bit and then that little bit. And you had 10 miles of this to do to get to Kingfisher.
Yeah, about 3 weeks probably to make the tow. I would have thought that they would have come down because the Shuswap River exits Maple Lake on the west side.
Yeah.
You would have thought that they would have come down the west side to run into the river. But no, they came down the east side, mostly because there were lots of points of land, and there was more logging done on the east side of the, on the east side of the lake.
Yeah.
And so while they were coming down the lake, they were picking up booms from other camps. And then they went on down to Cottonwood Creek, or about opposite the river.
Yeah.
And they relied then on downdrafts out of Cottonwood Creek, because there's, just like clockwork, there's always a nighttime downdraft with quite a little wind that comes down. And so they would get down to that point, turn the bag boom loose and the horse jack and all the rest of it, or maybe they left it tied up, but anyway, they pulled the anchor for sure. And the wind then would carry the boom across till it got to Layton's Point. It got then into the draw of the river, and they could just watch it with rowboats and pike poles and so forth and get it down to the river mouth. And now they sort of tied it all up and made a gate so that they didn't want that whole mass of logs to get loose to head down the river.
Yeah.
They wanted them to go one at a time, and there might have been some scaling to be done at that time and some identification put on the logs, I don't know, hammers or whatever. Anyway, so they wanted the logs to go one at a time, sort of down the river.
At least start the thing in an
Yeah.
orderly fashion,
Yes,
because you knew it was going to get disorderly
Uh-huh.
reasonably soon.
That's right.
You mentioned the stamp hammer, as a matter of fact, and we've got one right here. This one is whose stamp hammer?
Bell pole.
And we know that because that's a bell.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so the function would be that somebody would go and whack this into the end of each log.
And yeah. Now, being bell pole, probably it was just cedar.
This would be cedar poles.
But it would identify it as being bell pole cedar tree or pole,
Yeah.
rather than B.J. Carney or something of that nature.
He'd have his own stamp
Yeah,
hammer.
he'd have his own stamp hammer, of which I don't have one.
Or you could paint it,
Yeah,
and that
paint
paint, if it was red paint, that was Johnson's.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Yep, right.
So that's the function of the stamp hammer. And obviously, too, this is a lot more selective. I just see this mass of logs heading down the river, but you would send your saw logs down, and then you'd send other stuff down.
Yeah, there was saw logs, of course. There was white pine, because that was a specialty kind of timber. Went to a special mill or was treated in a special way. So, yeah, it was a hodgepodge of cedar poles, logs, ties, just everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
And it would finally arrive at Enderby.
Yeah.
And would they have some kind of a dam to keep the logs from heading any further?
Well, of course, pretty hard to dam the river. But at any rate, yeah, they had the river harnessed, was the verbiage. And they had pilings and stuff quite a ways up the river, and gates and stuff to be able to gather logs and send on down, because the pole yard, now Bell Pole, I don't know whether they had a pole yard down around Sycamoose or not, but at any rate, like, there had to be logs sorted out to go to a pine mill, or poles to go to B.J. Carney's, or poles to go to Bell. You know, so they had it all harnessed so that they could send logs to where they're
Sorted out on the water.
Yeah.
Who are some of the characters that were around at this time? Because it seems to me that all of this industry attracts characters.
Well, Blind Louie was actually worked with my grandfather, and somewhere around the turn of the century they built a log chute over on the east side of Maple Lake, over by Cottonwood Creek, and a log chute there was just a bunch of logs that were fastened to the hillside, and it just formed a trough. And of course the logs didn't always slide down this thing, but you had to have a little snow and ice, and it would shoot the logs down. Anyway, this guy was named Blind Louie.
We don't have a picture of Blind Louie,
No, we
but
don't
describe this guy to me.
Blind Louie was apparently an American, and he had been in a chemical accident and lost the elasticity of his eyelids. So left to his own devices, his eyes were always closed. So if he wanted to see you, he had to, you know, hold them open, sort of a thing. But when he was working out in the bush, he would have a rubber band around that would hold his eyelids open. And of course, because it was held open, and you know, they were always watering and rimmed with red and yellow, and it scared the hell out of all the kids in the valley for a number of years. Anyway, that was Blind Louie.
But he managed to work in
sure.
this state?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, people had to in those days. There was no WCB or anything.
Dave Simard, thank you very much for coming in today and telling us the story of log drives on the Shuswap River. I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Right on. We'll see you again next time on Pioneers and Places.